but humans are wired for connection.
Yeah.
And so now the job of technology becomes, how can you be so good that you almost disappear? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this. I saw a church service 3 or 4 years ago where it was literally a hologram.
Yeah.
And I was like, this can be so gross and weird. And then you get into the room and 30 seconds into the thing, you forget.
Yeah.
Because it was so good
Yeah.
that you weren't like, oh, I'm looking at a projection. I feel like I'm looking at the real person.
Yeah.
And I think that the real promise of great technology is the idea of one-to-many.
Yeah.
Because what I was saying before, as an executive coach, before 2020, it would have been like, oh, I'm getting on a plane every Sunday night. I'm gone all week. I'm missing out on, my 9 and 11-year-old growing up and being close to my wife and going on date nights. And I come back in Friday evening, and then hopefully I'll squeeze in enough 48 hours before I get on a plane again. And now the beauty of technology is it can be a both and.
Yeah.
Like I'm on calls all week long. And you've coached me even on my setup in my home office, like, hey, here's the cameras, here's the lighting, here's the audio. So again, technology is not a barrier because they can like, I can't hear you, or your lighting's terrible, or the background feels cheap. Like, why am I listening to you to help me run $100 million enterprise, right? Yeah. Those things are important because our neurology is making those assumptions and calculations before we're making a choice about that. That's our subconscious.
Well, if you've ever been in a room, an arena that was weak on their production, and the fighter walks out and the music's low or it's distorted, there's no real lights, there's no ambient, explosive, energetic environment. The fighter fight's different.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I've walked into arenas where it was, you step 1 foot in, through the hallway into the openness of the arena, and it is like getting jolted with, electricity.
Yeah.
And there's no way, I'm telling you from personal experience, that you can say that doesn't affect the fighter, because I fought better.
Yeah.
I lasted longer.
Yeah.
I did better just because of what the production value did to my own energy and so forth. So
I definitely think there's a piece of that. And I had this conversation with, I'm trying to remember who it was. I had a conversation with a few different people about when you're playing an instrument, as an example.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you were playing an instrument that costs more, you tend to play differently because there is a perceived like subconscious value in the fact that this thing costs more, so it has to sound better, so it has to make me play better and sound better and all of those kind of things. And I think to a certain degree from a production value standpoint, I think that's true as well. I think when it's done correctly, and it's not overdone and overblown, but when it's done correctly, it adds a huge amount of emphasis. It becomes a force multiplier for the message that you're trying to get out. And again, like taking this back to the business world, it's the same thing. Like when you do technology right, whether it's digital signage in your messaging, whether it's your conference rooms that people are meeting in, that they're trying to connect, if they have a confidence in the technology, they're going to have more confidence in themselves. To several different clients who are doing, who want to do like TV service and those kind of things. And there's a lot of people that are doing, just a YouTube TV subscription, right?
Right.
And they're playing that on just some random player, because there's so many different options for that now between like an Apple TV or a Roku or, all these different devices that you could use. There's so many opportunities for that.
Yeah. And now I get to ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
So what's funny is we worked on a project at a previous place, and how has that now changed in a way that it ingests?
So there are several different, I think, platforms that there's several different pieces of that I think that everybody's looking at. I think they're probably going to get ready to swap that system out soon, which is funny because, like, to your point, like we literally installed that in 2020.
That's right.
And so we're at 5 years, and so it's like you're now at the space of like, okay, what's the next step there? It's interesting because there are platforms like that are very strong for enterprise, where you could deploy several different boxes and stream all different kinds of content to all different locations and those kind of things. And then you have the things like the Amazon Fire Sticks and the Apple TVs, and there's so many more small and medium businesses using those types of technologies for digital signage than some of these larger platforms, right? And it's funny to kind of go through and watch. Some of these are very sized for enterprise level companies, and some of them are very sized for like, I'm just going to plug this into a TV and hope for the best, kind of deal. But again, it goes back to what you were talking about a second ago, is like the more that you put it on the front end and decide what it is that you're trying to get it to do, it's easier to find the right solution and right size it to whatever the need of the company or organization is at that time.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what do you think's been the most effective tool for you guys for getting that message out?
Yeah, I mean, podcast organically, and obviously then paid ads. There's lots of technology that go into paid ads, so that's kind of its own little category. But, I was reading a little synopsis on an influencer that I follow, and basically he was breaking down like, look, you can have an amazing business, but word of mouth is only going to take you so far. And so at some point you got to put your big boy pants on and you got to start, advertising to a pretty large scale in order to really do anything significant. And I think that there's just a lot of tools inside of that bubble that not most, I would say, 9 out of 10 stay away from, because they never get to the place where they're like, okay, I'm willing to pay for this. Because paid ads, in whatever type of business is scary. Like, I don't want to pay for leads. I don't want to pay for, and you have to have a really solid sales process. And like, there's things that go along with paying for advertising that make you not only a legit business, but also like, we should take advantage of this and not be losing money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of people, I think it feels like this, compared to like SEO in a way, right? Because a lot of people don't understand like, what is SEO actually doing and why does it matter? Like, what's the thought process behind it? Those kind of things. It feels like this, black magic voodoo thing that like I put money into and money comes out, to a certain extent. But it's like, if you take the time to understand like what's happening behind that, with the psychologies of things and how people are making those decisions, how you're getting in front of people, and then build that into your process, it can become a whole different deal. Are you seeing, from an advertising standpoint, since you mentioned advertising, do you see more interaction and more turnover in advertising from video ads that you've done, or from just plain text picture?
Good question.
Ads?
Yeah, the ugly text by far outperform video, which is kind of wild.
That is interesting.
I guess it depends on what platform. Like, obviously, ugly text on TikTok doesn't outperform, but yeah, I think there's still very much a oversight to something that is simple, that people can read. And because it's not so pretty, it catches people's eye. So it's like, 5, maybe more than that, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, advertising was about making it pretty, to make it stand out, right? To make it look legitimate and professional. But those things are so easy now to do. I can make anything look professional with an editor, and so to be different is the point. Right? Advertising is to catch people's attention. And so at least the game now, video still very much work, and I think that they'll work for a very, very long time. But the ugly text ads still crush, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you started Hire VP, what do you think is the number one technology that you guys get the most use out of, that has the biggest return on investment for you as a business owner, but also for like your clients in that kind of deal?
Okay. I mean, obviously, in the remote work world, you have to have a good, and it's crazy because a lot of people don't think through it. Well, you got to have good internet.
You got to have decent internet.
Yeah,
sure.
And so does your person overseas, which is problem number one. Most people hire someone they don't ask, like, oh, do you have the infrastructure needed to perform this job? But so the obvious things aside, the tools that we've really taught business owners to use that have been really effective are things like Loom. Recording yourself doing something so that it can be replicated, an SOP can be built. And it all comes to communication. And so what a lot of people don't pay enough attention to, and this is kind of a segue into what like supports what you do, is the quality of audio and video matters.
Absolutely.
You have to take out every like wall or thing, speed bump, if you will, obstacle to making sure that communication is dialed. And so, for instance, with our virtual professionals, like everybody on my team gets a microphone. We want is it a condenser mic? We want one where they only hear what's going on here. What's that called?
So it'd probably dynamic.
Probably dynamic.
And it'd be, as far as the pattern goes, it'd be probably cardioid.
It's a cardioid dynamic mic. So I'm like, don't get the one that picks up everything. You're in a small space. You got family running around. So like, those things matter. And then a webcam, let's make sure it's not grimy and gross. And I remember early on when I was starting this journey, I had a client a prospect come back on a sales call with me. And he says, I chose you because you look amazing. I'm like, he's like, you're clear and I can hear you and I can tell the professionalism matters.
Yeah.
And so things like Loom and WhatsApp and Zoom in this virtual world are amazing.
Yeah.
But they're only as good as the audio and video.
So trying to figure out kind of how to build some of that flexibility into the system, you know, I think it saves us a lot of time and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So,
and then building a culture that, you know, actually
that will
appreciates.
Adopt it. Yeah, that will adopt it, right?
Yep.
Because in their case, they realize like, hey, I've been out to, you know, 6 different jobs and none of them have all gone perfectly, but we've been able to pivot when we needed to get the job done.
Yeah.
Still deliver on time, still do the things that we needed to do. We've seen a lot of benefit from that.
Right.
You know, having that conversation.
Especially if you can explain the why.
Yeah.
Like explain
Absolutely.
the why, show real world examples.
Yeah.
Have them feel it, right?
Yeah.
See it out in the field, whether, you know, you're a CEO of a tech company or whatever you do. Like, that's so important. I think change is super important. Explaining the why, especially to high C's.
Yeah.
They need to know the why. You can't just change things for the sake of it, right?
You've got to understand like the difference in the variation and why you're actually doing something different.
Yep.
You know, and why you're having to pivot or, you know, make those changes. It's you know, we run into it all the time. You know, you've got systems that you think are going to work perfectly, and you go to start the install, and there's like 1 or 2 things that throw a wrench in it, and you have to be able to, you know, pivot in a different direction. You have to have captured enough on the front end so that you're not constantly going back to the client and doing a change order.
Yeah, that's the worst,
right?
Worst case scenario.
And that's what you don't want to do, right? You don't want to have to constantly go back and be like, well, it's going to cost more money to
especially if it's your fault. And not yours.
Well, exactly. I know there's things like from a business standpoint that like I feel like if you can engineer in some of that flexibility, then you can make those things work, right? You can get it to a place where like if you need to pivot, you've already got that calculated in your you know, overall thought process, and it saves them time and money as well. Like at the end of the day, I appreciate the point of being as exact as possible, but I think what everybody misses in that is everything doesn't always work perfectly the way that you think it's going to.
Yeah.
You know, in any implementation or this water is really great. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
It's good to drink. It's whatever, right? I've set a reasonable expectation with you, and when you actually drink it, like you're like, oh yes, this is great. What you mentioned earlier, the feeling of that, and you understand the value of it. You got what you were promised, like all of those things, right? On the entrepreneur side, on the GTK side, what technology are you the most excited about? I think I know the answer to this question, but
yeah, you know, it's hard not to be excited about AI.
Yeah.
Just every single day, it seems like as the use of AI continues to develop and just become more mainstream, it's 10xing productivity.
Yeah.
A lot of people are concerned that AI will replace humans in the workforce. And, you know, there may be some of that, but it's like anything. When electricity was invented, people were resistant of electricity because they thought, you know, it was controlled by demons. And so they didn't want it inside of their house. And so as we continue to develop as a society and continue to learn and, you know, adapt new technologies, there's always early adopters and there's always slow adopters to whatever that technology is. And if you're not playing with AI on a daily basis right now, you are setting yourself up for failure 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's filtered into a lot of different things. So we use it. There are a lot of different manufacturers that use it in cameras now, right?
Wow.
So for video conferencing, like the cameras will have a certain amount of AI in them that will split the image or follow the speaker or, you know, frame the group of people or, you know, some of those kind of things. So there's a lot of AI and audio tuning for rooms and things like that now as well. So once you've set up a system, you just go through and kind of turn it on and say, okay, everything's set up, kind of go through and tune the system. To your point, I mean, there's still a human interaction there because you've still got to have somebody that can tell you if something's gone off the rails, right? And still be able to kind of point things out that you need to think about or, you know, things that you've got to give. From a technology standpoint, what are you seeing right now that's the most effective for either business or education or both, or, you know, so maybe something that crosses over, but what are you using now that you feel like really helps you? Or what is something that you've seen people use that has been more of an obstacle or a, you know, struggle?
I think really the one of the biggest challenges that we have is there's so much out there.
Yeah.
You know, when we first started, you had a tape player.
Yeah.
Or you had the slide where you would punch it and go to a slide.
Advance to the next one.
Then you had the projector that you could put up there and a computer that was simple because you could do your presentations, you could do whatever you needed, project it up there.
Yeah.
Now what I'm finding is there's an app for everything. And it's being able to navigate. So when I went back to teaching last year, I logged on to my dashboard, and on my dashboard, I guarantee you there's 50 apps.
Yeah.
I have come to know how to use 10.
Right.
And I think that's one of the challenges that we have is there's so much and nobody really teaches you how to utilize it or how to connect with it.
Right. Getting the most out of the technology that you're using. And to your point, I think if anything, technology has progressed so fast and so quickly that there are so many different options for so many different things. And we talk about this all the time is in any given situation or system, even like in the space that we're in now, like, with cameras and mics and everything, there's literally thousands of ways to do this. Right?
Correct.
There are hundreds of different options for mics. There are hundreds of different options for cameras and, hundreds of different options for lighting. And it's figuring out like what actually works for you, right, as the individual.
Right.
And then what makes sense, like, so that whatever you are using is multiplying your time and is helping you, but it's not an obstacle. Right?
Correct.
That kind of thing. So no, I totally get that. What role does technology play in how you're serving your clients today versus say 5-10 years ago? What do you think the biggest differences are?
Oh man, massive. I'm in a very traditional industry and filled with people that are just personality types that are tilted that way, right?
Yep.
Conservative, more analytical, all these things that personality types that, typically accountants are, right? You can throw like engineers, that type of personality. Right?
Yeah.
So they're generally slow adopters. And also that's, another reason why the industry just kind of sucks and customer service sucks and whatever. But technology's played a huge role, especially in the last 24 months with, obviously AI has been a massive thing we've implemented across all of our platforms, getting into a legitimate CRM system. We personally use HubSpot, and of course, inside of HubSpot, you can do all kinds of things. But what's really amazing about that is the technology we've been using, in the old days. When I say the old days, I don't know, 2 years ago. That's the old days now. It's like I would have a meeting like, okay, I'm sitting down here with Jeff. I'm talking about his situation. Well, somebody has to take all these notes, right? Like who's, and for me, like I'm a relational guy and whatever, I'm a terrible note taker. And like for a long time, all this stuff was just stored in my head.
Right.
And so now the technology is amazing to where it's like I can sit down with, like you, Jeff, and I have my AI note taker on the call and it takes immaculate notes and I don't have to quote, remember anything, right? Like I can go back and look at all these notes and know exactly, okay, I need to help this guy solve this problem. And here's all the information I need because he told me in that call. And I'm not reaching back out to Jeff and be like, what'd you say you were doing there? I can't remember, yada, yada, yada. And so what's awesome is that note taker, say it's on this call here, it's got your email address, it knows it's Jeff. As soon as we get off that call, those notes get transcribed and thrown directly into Jeff's contact, inside my CRM system. The awesome thing is my CRM also has AI just layered in it. Like I can pull up Jeff's contact record and it's going to immediately just create a little paragraph up in the right corner of like, okay, what's going on in this situation? It'll be like, okay, paid an email Jeff 2 days ago and it was about this. And, and it's just this immediate little paragraph up in the top corner. And then of course you can just query it about anything too. You're like, how much did Jeff say he was going to sell that real estate for?
Right.
Spits it right out.
Yeah. And then
it's like
pops up in the note side. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you're never like just scrambling, looking for information. I don't have to go back to the clients and ask them something they've already told me before.
Right.
It just makes everything smoother and it allows us to really build a process where, obviously with that CRM system, and we've really worked super hard with technology, building SOPs and processes that to where, communication doesn't fall through the cracks, right? And we try to, mistakes still happen, but like we build a system to where it's like somebody just has to not follow the system for something to fall through the cracks.
Right.
And, even then, Jeff, like, I think I was telling you the other day where it's like, now we've even taken those SOPs and uploaded those into our kind of AI space that we've made that me and all my team members are on. And by being able to upload, we have very detailed SOPs of like, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. And you can upload those to your AI. And then everybody in your team has the ability to just ask your AI system, like, what's the next step in the process? What do I do after this? What do I do after this? And it's all right there.
Viewing AI through the lens of it's another tool, right? And view it from the perspective of like, if you look at a drill, go back 100 years and a drill was a hand crank, you could still drill the same hole,
Right.
but it took you a whole lot longer than what it does now, moving forward to wired and then cordless and,
Right.
all of those kind of things. It's just the advent of like, how can you compile a lot of information and, pull in other things that you wouldn't have thought about, and those kind of things. So I think it's viewing it as a tool rather than, a replacement. Right?
Exactly. Well, it's like our microphones, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody, well, maybe not nobody, but most people who are going to do a podcast are not going to not use a mic.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, we could, if we just recorded this on the computer, it would get our voices.
Yeah.
The problem is that on the other end is that that would be kind of hard to listen to. It'd be a little scratchy. It'd be a little, maybe you could hear the air conditioning. You could probably hear me breathing, this tool doesn't replace communication.
Right.
It doesn't replace the ability to tell a story.
Yeah.
But it actually makes it better.
Yeah.
And so I think that's how we should use technology. And I love that's how you guys do in your business with, technology for businesses, because if you can have businesses that are actually able to connect with other humans.
Yeah.
Yes, it's through technology. Yes, we're using mics. Yes, it's a podcast setup or it's a LED wall. But if my interaction, my experience can be heightened, also with then the people who are there, then it's just a no-brainer.
GPS wise or clue wise that would get them somewhere, and then somebody would do something physically with them. So we're using the technology to help us, but then I also want more interaction, and so that we're not relying only on heads in the tablets or heads in that piece. So I'm in a transition phase because I see the writing on the wall to some degree is in some elements, we have too much of it, not in the education world, but in our lives in general. So I want to figure out how the fun, the learning can be a little bit more balanced in that aspect, but that's not to be the case. So when we do our trainings online, it's a blend of that as well. So I love that we have online trainings and different courses and modules, but we have assessments and, go out in the real world and try these things out, right? Things have to be implementable, not just watch a video, check mark, I'm done, I know it. Like there has to be real world application for it to be effective. I have loved this, and I think Dr. Troy agrees with it, is that Ben Franklin's famous quote is, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn.
Yeah.
So without the involvement piece, it's all for naught.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. You bring a really good point there is you're wanting people to, one, like, yes, you have this whole kind of thing put together in the tablet that somebody is following, right? But you don't, to your point, like you don't want them just to be, it's basically like being in your phone all day, right? You need some push to get back into the real world and actually communicate and have, conversations with other people. And whether it's doing a task, whether it's collaborating on some problem or any of those kind of things, I think that's probably a key piece that a lot of people are missing is it's like, how can I push everything into technology in some cases, right? And have as little interaction with other people as possible. Well, you want to do that in some instances, but like you need to have the reverse where it's pushing you to actually do things, in the real world as well. And I totally agree with you on that. I think that's something that a lot of companies miss, by trying to automate. I mean, obviously you want to be efficient and you want to do things as efficiently as possible, but there should still be some level of, I know for me, like this is an example, right? Whenever you call a helpline, right? I hate getting into the circle of death robosphere where you're just going from robot to robot to robot. And it's like, I just want to talk to a person to make sure that I understand what's happening and make sure that they understand how they can help me rather than just going through this infinite death loop of press 1 for help, that kind of deal. There are definitely, I think, use cases on both sides of that. But so, Dr. Troy, any other thoughts on that? I know you mentioned you had a couple of other thoughts around the technology piece.
Well, I think that one of the things that Ben brought up that also that you just now talked about was how you might use AI. And so what we have determined and how we figured out is we can use AI-powered bots to assist us in our training and development. The bot serves as a way to interact when we're not there. Doesn't replace us, but it just gives an additional access, and the bot knows everything that we know. So we launched Carl, the very first AI-powered book bot, and it stands for Cohesive Artificial Response Leader, and went along with our first joint best-selling book called Becoming a Cohesive Leader, the power-up guide to grow, develop, and advance your career.
You were talking about SOPs. I'm curious, for your SOPs or for your videos, are you cataloging all of those in a particular system, or are you just doing Loom? how is that working for you guys as far as when you onboard somebody? Do you have like a whole set of, here's like the 25 videos you've got to go through, or, you know, what does that look like?
Yeah, love that you asked. So we actually have an entire kind of onboarding catalog that lives within our Google Drive right now. And it's a pretty robust like system and process that is Google Sheets and Google Docs and hyperlinks to videos and trainings and all of that. And we're in the process of actually migrating that into a platform that is created. That's going to be it's its own entity, and that product is leased back to iCopy, because small to medium sized businesses like ours, especially if we're hiring 20 to 50 people at a time that need to be onboarded.
Yeah.
One of the things I identified was the amount of time alone that it was taking to review resumes and then do first round interviews, which 20% of them were no shows. And now I've got human capital time of high level managers being wasted.
Yeah.
So we've created a separate platform that eventually will be its own standalone to be sold to small to medium sized businesses, so that all of those resumes are ingested by AI and it gives it a scoring system. And then the first round interview is actually done via video. So you come into the platform and then that's also scored by AI. And then you're put into your second round interviews, which is where our humans come into play.
Yeah.
And then after you're hired, then the onboarding system also lives in that platform, and all of the videos and the trainings are within the platform, because we built all of that and it's very manual. And the user experience of having to go through multiple documents and click a link and then go here, the training process was painful.
Yeah.
And then after, let's say you're 45 days in and you need to reference some of these things.
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of hard to find. And so we're building all of that into a tool that makes the user experience more seamless and makes it super smart for ongoing referencing.
What technology are you the most excited about that you see coming in the next few years? May intertwine with your, writing. It may intertwine with something else, but just technology in general.
Just in general. I don't know. I think about text to video, because it's come so far already. Like we're pretty close to where you may not be able to tell pretty soon if it was AI generated video, but I mostly think about it in terms of my son is an actor and he writes stories, and how cool would it be if I could just throw his script into an AI agent and then he sees it come alive.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. The creative process of that. I would agree with you. And I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of where this goes over the next little bit, because I agree with you. I think it has come a long way from where it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there are still some pieces of it that are just a little, it's just there's just a piece of it missing, right?
Yeah.
But I was watching the thing when Google released their latest version, and they had done a video, basically like a short feature film or whatever, using both the AI generated stuff, but then also doing actual shoots with actors and all that kind of stuff. And they blended the two together in a way that you really kind of couldn't tell where one thing started and where one thing ended, with some of it.